Hello everyone, welcome back to Backlot Banter. I'm Tanner Dykstra, joined as always by my good friend and fellow box office enthusiast, Tucker Hazel.
Give myself a little golf clap this time.
Oh, I see. Well, Tucker, your mic setup is so good that I didn't even hear that golf clap.
Oh, no, I
It
was
so
being quiet. Golf claps are meant to be quiet, Tanner. Come on.
That's true. Well, no,
You're dressed in golf gear. You should know this.
That's fair. I expect raucous applause at golf tournaments, much the same as I expect raucous applause for our box office. Tucker, say it with me. Ballyhoo.
Ballyhoo, yes.
That's right. All right. Tucker, we are here today to talk about the box office month that was July 2024, coming off a steaming hot June. How did we follow that up? How are we in the heat of summer rounding out the, building up the box office? Quite well, it would seem.
Yeah,
we're doing quite well. We have some overperformers, some underperformers, as there always is, but I'm excited to break all of those down. But before we get into it, I got to do the YouTube things. You got to subscribe to Backlot Banter. I'm not asking you to. You have to subscribe to Backlot Banter.
All right, I'll get on that.
That's right. Also, like this video, comment down below your thoughts on, sort of how the box office fared, or if you wanted to keep up with the box office with us outside of these breakdowns, you can join our Discord server. That link is in the description. There we can talk about box office stuff quite often. We talk about movies a whole lot. If you like video games, if you're one of those people who like video games.
One of those sicko freaks.
Yeah, that's right.
Dang.
You can talk about those there. Comics, cooking, music, television, anything under God's green sun. No, what am I saying? God's green sun. That's what I just said. Perfect. You can talk about it there.
Movies. Let's shift our focus to movies, a place where your mealy mush brain can actually focus itself.
We're focusing, okay? We're putting my mealy mush brain through a sieve, and we're focusing on movies.
Mm-hmm. Tanner, the top 10 July 2024 domestic openings are not particularly surprising, though I have no idea. I don't remember what our picks were, so we're going to have to see who got what right when we move on to the next slide. But first, let's go over what these top 10 July 2024 domestic openings were. Number one, with a golden bullet, a goddamn platinum bullet. Tanner.
Yeah, that's right.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
A bullet that has some sort of swear word written on it, no doubt.
Tanner, an adamantium bullet.
There we go. That's the one.
$211 million. And usually there's something sticking out at the top there, but usually number two doesn't also open over $100 million, but number one is still almost double that, which is number two, Despicable Me 4 at $122 million, with Twisters coming in at an incredibly respectable $81 million.
God, I'm respecting that so hard.
Oh my God. Longlegs at 22, Fly Me to the Moon at 9.4, and then rounding out the top 10, we have Maxine, Sound of Hope, The Story of Possum Trot, Indian
We all know
2,
it. We all know the story of Possum Trot, don't we?
Well, then why they didn't even need to put that in the title. It's just like,
That's true.
Sound of Hope. That's the story of Possum Trot.
Of course.
We all just like fill that in. Bad News number 9 and Lion King. And number 10, Tanner, was that a re-release of the
That was the re-release.
One?
That would be the 30th anniversary of Disney's The Lion King.
And once again, we are in a month where I keep up with movies pretty good. I never heard of Bad News. I never heard of Indian 2. So
those are two Indian films. So there you
gotcha.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it looks like I'm not keeping enough up with the Indian box office.
Not keeping tabs. Yeah.
Tanner, let's see how we did. Deadpool, Despicable Me, Twisters, Longlegs, Fly Me to the Moon. Our predictions were, drumroll please. Deadpool,
The same ones.
Despicable Me, Twisters, Fly Me to the Moon, Maxine. Interesting. Okay, we were not thinking at all about Longlegs. I mean,
many people weren't.
Looks like we put a little more faith in the quote-unquote IP power of the X trilogy, which was not warranted, apparently, as it turned out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the opening weekends of all this, but, frankly, I think that we, along with many other box office prognosticators, just were not prepared for the phenomena of Longlegs, which we'll get to in due time. But, Tucker, by and large, I'd say we did a pretty good job here. I think we had some pretty respectable, pretty admirable even, and I mean, just downright incredible box office predictions here that just didn't pan out. I think largely just because, we went with what was going to be more expected, and there were some unexpected phenomena happening at the box office this month. But, Tucker, before we get into that, breaking down each movie in specific, we should talk about the cinema score and Rotten Tomatoes score of these films.
Good month, Tanner.
Good
Look
month.
At that.
We got so we got a couple A's up top. The two highest grossers of the month, Despicable Me 4 and Deadpool and Wolverine,
Just
are big
proven crowd pleasers.
Crowd crowd pleasers is what we got here. And then, we have a movie that did very, very well considering, and a movie that did quite poorly considering everything surrounding it. Those would be Fly Me to the Moon and Twisters, both got an A-. Very good, very respectable there for that cinema score. And then you got your horror stuff. I mean, we're broken records on this all the time, but this doesn't get the high cinema scores. Maxine got a B, Longlegs got a C+.
Yeah, that's interesting because I would say the biggest problem with both of those movies is their endings. People being pretty underwhelmed by the way that the films close.
Definitely weight a cinema score coming from an audience.
Which is something that you have to bear in mind when we're thinking about who is being asked for a cinema score. Of course, it's only select audiences in specific areas, which can skew certain things. But it also is just as they're walking out of the theater, so there's no ruminating on it. There's no discussing with friends. This is
you are giving us you are slapped down a scorecard as soon as those credits start rolling.
Tanner, it'd be kind of fun. Riddle me this. All right, let's consider.
Okay.
Find a template for cinema score. Like punch cards, scorecards.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's online.
Give them out to our friends or fill them in when we're coming out of a movie.
I see.
Could be interesting. Could be an interesting little game. I'm also just curious what they look like. I have no idea.
I think so too. I'll look into this.
Pull the shit up.
I'll look into
Pull
this.
the shit up.
Okay.
All right, but let's start where the month started, which was Despicable Me 4, sitting at, as of now, a total of $756 million. Just exactly what was expected. Just exactly what was expected.
I mean, this thing has not made $1 billion yet, but it's not one of these barnstormers like we'll be talking about in Deadpool and Wolverine. This is something that is going to consistently make money, and it's also operating in the shadow of Inside Out 2, which is another immensely popular family film that has made at this point over $1 billion, nearing $1.5 billion. So I mean, this is just I part of me is thinking like, well, is Despicable Me 4 a little bit of a disappointment in that regard, but it'll end up crossing that $1 billion mark, even though I think it is.
Probably.
I don't know, actually. I say that, but I mean, this thing's going to VOD. I think it went today, actually. I think today was the VOD premiere of it, since today's Tuesday. We're recording this a little bit later than we typically would be. Just means more updated numbers for you and yours.
Yeah. Technically, it's always updated to as whenever we record.
Exactly.
It's really no different.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's made $750 million at this point, and another 250. I'm sure it's got some international markets to debut in yet, but
potentially.
Minions: Rise of Gru didn't make $1 billion, so
true. Yeah, and I would say that is just maybe it's. Honestly, I have no idea. Like, I'm trying to think of okay, what is maybe causing people to not go out to Despicable Me movies in the way that they were when both Minions and Despicable Me 3 made $1 billion each. I can't say. I mean, I think these movies are pretty bad. It could be that the shtick is wearing thin, maybe, or that. Yeah. You can't really say that there's more competition now than there was when those other movies were coming out, because 2017, when did Minions come out?
2015.
2015, okay. Those were big years for both those years for movies.
They were.
And so I think, it's not competition.
No, it's not. I think what it honestly might be, and this is maybe just me berating the cultural understanding of Despicable Me and Minions a little bit, is, I mean, as you were saying, I mean, these first movies that came out in 2010 to 2015, it's a little after our time for going to these movies, our parents bringing us to these.
Sure.
But
yeah, I mean, we definitely went to the first one when we were kids.
Of course,
absolutely.
But I think there's also I think the Despicable Me generation might be aging out just a little bit.
Sure.
The target demo potentially. I mean, we're saying all this, Tucker, but this movie opened to over $120 million. It has made $750 million. They are still made on a relatively small budget. This one was $100 million. I believe it was the most expensive of these series up to this point, simply because of the demands of the voice acting cast and the mounting sort of paychecks that they demand. But ultimately, I mean, this movie has more than tripled its budget, so they're doing perfectly fine over at Illumination. They will continue charging forward with these.
Yeah, we say it's a disappointment in comparison to this. In our minds, should be $1 billion picture. Again, we're kind of still quote unquote riding the mental high of the pre-pandemic movies consistently making $1 billion,
Yeah.
and Despicable Me 3 and Minions were both part of that. But you're right, Minions: Rise of Gru made a lot of money. I think it made 850 or something like that, but that didn't get to $1 billion. And this one, it will probably creep towards 850, maybe 900, but I think it will settle just under $1 billion. But you have to look at that budget of $100 million, which is exactly what this budget for this kind of movie needs to be. They know it's going to make its budget back opening weekend, and then just obviously there's tons of marketing potential. There's tons of backpacks and pencil cases and things that they're making money off of. Lots of also cross advertising. If you were watching, if you were watching any TV channel in the lead up to this movie, you could be watching like football or basketball, and like the Minions would be like, bouncing around in the corner.
Had Minions there. The opening ceremony of the Olympics.
Yeah, I was watching the Olympics the other day, and I saw them, and I didn't even realize, like, what is going on? And so that is obviously something they're making quite a bit of money on. But also thinking about the fact that even if it doesn't make the same amount as Despicable Me 3 does, it is budgeted to about the exact same amount. I just did the math. Despicable Me 3 cost $80 million in 2017. That is $102 million in 2024 money. So
there you go. Yeah.
This is, by inflation, technically cheaper to make than Despicable Me 3, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder if Steve Carell got paid double for Despicable Me 3 since he was doing two characters, but I digress. Anyway, Tucker, yes, that's right, Gru and Drew, everyone's favorite characters. Quickly going over the hash marks that we have here, the notable things about Despicable Me 4. It is now, Despicable Me / Minions is now the 12th biggest franchise of all time at the box office. The first animated franchise to reach the $5 billion mark. We'll be talking about, there's actually a couple franchise making notes here that I'll have noted for all of these. Obviously Deadpool and Wolverine being a big one, but you know, we talked about international markets, and I did look this up. It only has Italy and Greece to debut in yet, theatrically. But it had the biggest studio opening of the year in Japan. Obviously, these movies do gangbusters overseas.
Yeah.
And, I mean, its Korean debut actually debuted above Deadpool and Wolverine.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying when these things just do crazy numbers internationally.
Yeah.
Because
and
there's
also
not
you can
necessarily
just
like a language barrier for the comedy and everything.
Definitely, yeah. And the Minions also speak in
gibberish
mixed
anyway.
language gibberish anyway. Yeah, so you don't even have to redub that if you're going to dub the movie.
Yeah.
But what I really want to, I'm going to use the word commend lightly here, but commend the Despicable Me franchise on is just its consistency. They've been putting these out every 2 to 3 years for most of our lives at this point. And even if comparing a 7-year gap between Despicable Me 4 and Despicable Me 3, you look at the Rotten Tomatoes, the IMDb, the cinema score, the budget, it's basically all the same across the board. And now that doesn't mean it's growing or shrinking in any way, but like that's actually kind of a good thing. It's just they know their market and they speak to it. But I mean, it's a good thing for the cinematic landscape in that there's still something that people are like willing to see, even if it's not reinventing the wheel.
No, it's not reinventing the wheel, and they will continue to, you know, sort of cynically, to use a cynical term here, continue to beat this dead horse until it stops spitting out $1 billion for them. So I think Minions 3 is dated for June 27th of 2026. So yeah, still operating on that 2 to 3 year cycle right now. So they're coming down the pike. Get ready, folks. Minions 3.
Yippee.
I wonder what celebrities will show up for 2 minutes here. All right.
Now let's take a look at Maxine, which, wow. I mean, $14 million on a $2 million budget is amazing.
Yes.
But I think that we were hoping for a lot more out of Maxine in a couple of ways.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tucker. I mean, like I said, we're looking at the franchises here. It had the best opening of the entire X franchise. It also, you know, talking about consistency across the series, the first two films cost $1 million. This film cost $2 million. So, I mean, that's again, you're looking at like just ramping up. This isn't set on like a farm or whatever as the other two were.
But also, you got to commend that $2 million budget. I mean, this movie looks amazing for $2 million. And there's a bunch of actors in it and a bunch of sets. This is not one location things like Pearl and X were. So even if this is for both of us, and I would say probably pretty much across the board, the weakest of the trilogy, it is the highest grossing, and it did really well with its budget. And I'm excited to see what Ty West does next after making such an interesting trilogy here. But I just wish that Maxine had been not only for us a better movie. We have it down in the bottom. You can see our score at a 5.4. Very underwhelming for the two of us. But also, I was hoping for this to be like we both had it in our top 10 openings or top 5 openings. Excuse me. I was hoping for this to be, because they marketed it so much more than the other two, a bigger smash hit. But it was only it was definitely a hit compared to its budget. So
yes.
You can't really complain too hard at the end of the day if you're a box office prognosticator.
And, you know, this opened to 6.7, didn't quite make the top 5, got that number 6 slot. You know, obviously, and culturally, I would say, has definitely fallen out of favor in return for the bigger indie horror sensation that we'll actually talk about next here. I think we got Fly Me to the Moon to talk about. You know, a movie that I just forgot about and many other people have. But, you know, the indie horror sort of torch was definitely held up by Neon and Longlegs this month.
Which is interesting, because Neon seems to be taking the torch from A24 in a couple of ways.
I don't want to jinx it, but it seems like we might be moving in that direction. Couple interesting notes.
Competition is good, Tanner.
I agree. A couple interesting notes that I found about this. You know, having the highest debut of the entire X franchise, it also opened on the fewest amount of screens in theaters. Only 2,400. X and Pearl were both in the, you know, not very far off, like the 26, 27 range. But, like, I just thought that was interesting. You know, obviously this summer is a little bit stacked. There's not a lot of screens to go around, especially this time after Deadpool and Wolverine is taking up a lot of that share. But even, you know, back towards the beginning of the month, there just wasn't a lot of theaters willing to give up a bunch of screens for Maxine. But, you know, you have to think, like, that could have debuted even higher if they, you know, slapped a few hundred more screens on here.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting things about the positioning of this film, because this opened on the 4th of July weekend, but it didn't do what movies usually do on the 4th of July weekend, which is actually open on the Wednesday before the 4th of July weekend, and get that 5-day, which would have bumped up the total here. It's ultimately fine. I mean, I don't know why they made that decision, but I think obviously Despicable Me 4 benefited greatly from that. That's something we didn't mention when we were talking about that.
Yes, that we're talking about the 5-day on that one.
As we usually do when a film opens on the 5-day, it would be so difficult to parse out what the 3-day actually is, because the numbers get spread out differently. But yeah, that's interesting. And I think what we can tell here is that this movie was just more specifically targeted, because they probably had some heat mapping data from the previous two films. And like, okay, which markets are actually going to see this? We don't have to put it out in North Dakota. I don't know. And then they just put it out in the places where it actually would be making money. And so that was probably actually a smart thing, and might have helped keep down some of the expenditures going into putting this film out into theaters. But it really, really did pay off for them. And here you have the total, the trilogy of this X trilogy cost $4 million to produce and has grossed $45 million. And so they are sitting pretty. Ty West is a successful filmmaker.
A24 is very happy with the outcome of all of this, even if they don't have the the cultural indie horror victory of the summer. They have probably $30 million plus in the pocket off this trilogy alone.
If not more.
They're also trading in the favor of these, the fandom around them. I saw recently that they are distributing novelizations of the trilogy.
I did see that,
coming out this year and early into next year. So I mean, I think we'll definitely see them try to really capitalize and try to launch Maxine, Minx, or Pearl, or whoever into like the horror echelon a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see where like Mia Goth's career goes from here. Ty West's career obviously will be fun to track after this. He has tossed out the idea of potentially doing another one of these, but frankly, I'd like to see both of them move on from this. You have
a trilogy in 2 years is great. A very successful trilogy in a totally original, successful trilogy in 2 years. That's the dream for an independent filmmaker.
by and large, a beloved and like has carved out a fandom amongst horror fans.
Yeah.
I mean, you take the W here, I think, and you move on. You kick the can down the road a little bit. And yeah, like I said, I mean, these are by and large beloved films, including this one, which we weren't crazy about, but it does have it a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, meaning
That's very surprising
every film of this horror trilogy, which cannot be said very often, has reviewed fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, a B cinema score for a horror movie is actually pretty good.
Solid. Pretty solid.
Yeah. We're going to be looking down the barrel of Longlegs coming up soon with a C- cinema score.
C+. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it did not fare very well. And, yeah.
But
okay,
Tanner,
Tucker. Yes.
Let's talk about Fly Me to the Moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tucker,
This
this
one
is
happened.
if you recall, this is one that I saw a couple weeks early at a mystery screening, and in that review, I noted that I saw it at that mystery screening, and that I also saw that they were having early access screenings coming up the following week, a full week before the film's wide release.
Yeah.
And in that review, towards the end, I noted I haven't seen a whole lot of marketing for this film. I think they are doing these early access and, mystery screening things to try and ramp up some buzz for the film, which on my part worked because I liked this, and it did not seem to pan out. Fly Me to the Moon has grossed $37 million so far at the box office on a budget of $100 million.
Oh, God. Now, I have a finger, Tanner.
Yeah?
And I like to call this finger the finger of justice.
Oh,
this
I
is
see.
where I point this finger at who's the goddamn blame for this. Is that Apple? Is that Apple over there
It's
being
Apple
involved
over
in
there.
the production
That
of this
is,
film?
This is an Apple production right here.
Oh, hello, Apple. You are notorious for giving way too much goddamn money to movies that do not need that much money to be made, and will not make that money back in the shadow of a doubt.
Or even, I would say, Tucker, just positioning your films poorly. Not marketing them to the degree that you should be. If you have $100 million to dole out for the film, you should also be pumping that sort of money into the marketing around it to make that film successful. And Tucker, we've had this discussion before, especially with Apple or other streamers putting their films out in theaters, is that ultimately, do they really care how these fare at the box office? They just want them to make a bit of a splash and draw people into the streaming service, which is how they really make their money. Because Apple did not distribute this film. This is a Sony distributed film, but Apple does retain the production and streaming rights to it, of course.
Yeah. And they tackle the production cost, which is really where the issue is for me. And my problem isn't that. I mean, actually, my problem is that this movie did not need a $100 million budget. I'm sure you saw it and did not see what $100 million reflected on screen. I'm sure it looks good. But if this movie was made for $50 million, it would still look good. And then you would have had $50 million instead of, presumably, they probably spent $100 million on this, probably put like 30 into marketing or something like that. Like
not
certainly
enough,
not,
surely. Yeah.
certainly not doubling what would have been for a $100 million movie, what you would expect for that. But if they put 50 into this and then a 50 into marketing it, that would have, just been better for basically everyone involved. I don't necessarily think that would have shifted this film's fate too hard. One thing that we have seen over the course of the last couple of years, following a lot of the box office, is that there is still that faint beating heart of the theatrical rom-com.
Yeah.
The faintest beating heart.
Every so
and
often one can
works.
splash out. Every so often one can splash out. Like Anyone But You is kind of the
okay, my bad.
point
Yes,
to.
yes. That's like the only one that we've really seen in the last couple
But
of years.
I think it's important to talk about positioning here.
Yeah.
And Tucker, what you don't want to do, and I can understand in theory the thought process behind this. Okay, because I have noted here this ended up being the lowest. Actually still is the lowest grossing Scarlett Johansson film since The Perfect Score 20 years ago.
Wow, that's
And the
crazy.
lowest grossing Channing Tatum film since more recent Steven Soderbergh's Haywire in 2011.
Wait,
which
what?
was
How much did Dog make?
Dog made more than this. It made like $45 million or something.
$84 million worldwide, Tanner.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 84.
My bad. My apologies to Dog.
Yeah, Dog, I was not familiar with your game. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about. It's like you have these two big stars. Some of these stars that are like on top of the world, or consistently being some of the most recognizable, or consistently appearing in high-grossing films. And what went wrong here? I mean, like I said, I don't think they marketed this very well, if at all. Sort of to make a splash. And you put this out in the middle of July. Okay, we are putting this, sort of after some quite well-grossing horror films, or recent horror films like A Quiet Place, for example, a big family movie in Inside Out 2, another big family movie in Despicable Me 4, and then they couldn't have predicted this, but like the one that I guess people kind of went out to go see this weekend instead was Longlegs, and then a week before Twisters, 2 weeks before Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, you were just setting yourself up for failure here.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at like Anyone But You opened around Christmas time, didn't open especially well, but got that Christmas time holiday audience, extended itself into it extended itself into January, and then re-upped itself around Valentine's Day. And I'm just like, why couldn't you have put this out like when something like It Ends With Us is coming out this weekend and is looking to make this film's entire gross in its opening weekend?
Yeah. It's pretty sad that they position the movie this way. I think that the argument is made, especially in the modern theatrical marketplace, where people aren't really going out to see everything, and it's really hit or miss what actually hits and what pulls people out, that we've really lost the art of counter-programming, and this is certainly what they were attempting to do, something a little bit more adult-skewing, something that isn't more family-friendly or blockbuster or IP-driven, which is basically what everything else is. This would have been the solid opener compared to whatever Fast and Furious or horror movie or whatever was coming out in like 2010 to 2016. Like, we always had the good counter programming solid performer, but those films were more properly budgeted, more properly marketed, and frankly the audience was more willing to be divided in the way that they don't seem to be anymore, and people are really only going to see certain pockets of movies, and it leaves things like this in the dust. I don't really have too much more to say about this.
I mean, what else?
Although I do have to say,
yeah.
Let's give the salute. I'm pointing the finger of justice, but the finger of justice isn't a good way this time. Thank you, Apple, for putting your films out in theaters. You have stated here that this was initially slated for a streaming release, but then Sony bought the theatrical rights after strong test screenings.
Yes.
Even this movie did not make very much money. It is important to keep trying, and we've seen a lot of this year of shifting films that were initially supposed to go to streaming to a theatrical release, and that has really helped bulk up the theatrical slate. This is a good, star-driven, well-made movie to put out in theaters. It did not work out, but that doesn't mean not to keep trying.
Tucker, I agree. And we say the positive test screenings. This film got an A- cinema score. I mean, the people who saw it liked it. Yeah. It's just that
definitely.
they couldn't get enough people to go out to see it. I also want to say, and this is just me ramping on the sort of marketing and the release date and stuff like that. This film had no information about it up until, I don't know, 4 months before it came out. Like, up until then, it was titled something entirely differently. It didn't have a poster. The sort of plot description of it was still incredibly vague and not anywhere resembling what the actual movie was about. Like, they just waited far too long for this. And far be it from me to say, I think they might be learning their lesson here with a little film called F1, which they dropped the trailer for.
Oh yeah, a year in advance.
A year in advance. That film was coming out next summer, and they dropped that trailer like a month ago at this point. Yeah.
That's impressive.
I think they're changing their tune a little bit.
The first massively successful Apple film is on its way.
Yeah.
Just wait a year.
And Tucker, this is just a quick yes or no here. Do you think this film would have fared better if it starred Chris Evans instead of Channing Tatum, like it was initially set to?
But still Scarlett Johansson?
Still Scarlett Johansson.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have any particular feeling either way. I like both those guys, but he's just a bigger name.
That's true.
And I will say that I think Channing Tatum has better rom-com chops than Chris Evans does.
It's true. That's true.
But you might as well give him the chance to flex his comedic chops a little bit. But you're not going wrong if you're casting Channing Tatum as the suave but also funny, charming gentleman.
Exactly. Correct. Okay, Tucker, let's talk about it. Longlegs, baby.
Lord Almighty.
Longlegs. Here we are.
This is the first time, I want to point out, that on our little tracking meter there, and in the sort of upper left quadrant of our slide, that there was an up arrow, which
That's
means
right.
that tracking was actually, for a good chunk of this month, pretty on point. But Godspeed Longlegs, just blowing those out of the water.
Absolutely coming out of nowhere here.
Yeah,
And we talk
top
about
rope.
marketing and
Bottom rope, but to the top.
bottom up to the top. We talk about marketing, Tucker, and as I was in the theater for Longlegs, wrapping up this film, seeing that the theater was packed, by the way. All the showtimes that weekend, I was looking. You couldn't get into another showtime to watch it again because they were all packed. I was like, this is how you do it. It was as simple as getting people, early critics, social media buzz, influencers, whatever you want to call them, whatever avenue you want to go down. It was as simple as, it is the scariest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That phrase shot this film to $22 million opening weekend on a $3 million budget, well above tracking. That tracking, again, I take the most recent tracking numbers, that was consistently ticking up week over week as this film's release neared. I mean, the hype was real for it, and it definitely paid off for them. It has made $80 million total. It has domestically outgrossed Furiosa recently. This is
That's
just
nuts.
a massive, massive, massive win for Neon.
Yeah.
And positioning them, slingshotting them, I think, a lot closer to the where they might want to be in the neck of the woods with A24, for example.
Yeah. And it's really cool that now both of them are competing on that level. I don't know if Neon's going to be able to necessarily keep that up.
They have another film coming out this weekend.
Which one?
Cuckoo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's not going to do the same thing. But I'm really happy for Longlegs, and really who you got to point to for the future is Osgood Perkins.
Yes.
Because Osgood Perkins has made a few movies before, but this is certainly the first time that we had heard his name or looked into who he was. But this is very smart. This movie is obviously massive. $3 million budget, $81 million so far. I'm sure it's not going to get too much higher than that. It's kind of lost a good chunk of its steam. But still, that is, by my quick maths, like 27 times the budget or something like that.
Yes,
And so they're just rolling in cash. And Osgood Perkins has another movie coming out early next year, and so
February,
his his name and mind as a horror auteur is going to be just building and building. And I think he's also announced a couple of other projects that he's working on.
He has currently. This was the first of 3 films he has basically completed with Neon.
That's
I think
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, Neon did all of them? Okay, interesting.
Yes, he struck. I listened to a podcast interview with him. He kind of on this one. This was the first one to he sort of brought to Neon, and then they just struck up a good creative partnership over there.
Yeah.
Much in the same way you might see directors doing with A24. And so they're like, yeah, why don't you make 3 movies for us for probably $15 million total.
Yeah. We also have here that this is the biggest opening weekend for an R-rated horror movie since The Nun 2 last year, which I think mostly just points to the first half of this year being very, very weak for horror. Now, you stipulate R-rated horror because you could then throw in a Quiet Place Day 1, and you're like, where does that fall in? But for a true to straight down the road horror movie, this is the biggest, and $22 million is not gigantic, but for what the kind of movie this is, it is. But it does point to so who usually takes the reins for the first half of the year to put out horror movies that have high opening weekends? Oh, that's Blumhouse. Oh, what have they been doing this year? Absolutely piss all. So Jason, get your shit together.
I don't really know what the deal is with Blumhouse. I mean, we've talked about this a couple times just in our personal lives, talking sort of looking at their slate, and it's just not really moving the needle.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a movie coming out in a couple weeks at the end of August called Afraid that I don't think
the trailer just came out like 2 weeks ago. What's going on with that?
This is another thing I have a problem with. They recently retitled a couple weeks ago, just had the trailer put out, just had the marketing materials and the posters and everything put out, like 4 weeks, 5 weeks before the movie comes out. Like, what are we doing here?
And I think that also might just point to like the Blumhouse shtick is kind of getting old a little bit, because I mean, they're Afraid is just them trying to do like Megan meets Searching, kind of like techie, like it's like what are we doing
it is
here?
exactly Megan meets Searching for sure.
And I think that they can probably gain back some of their steam as they're starting to build more IP and make collaborations with other established horror franchise. Of course,
Yeah.
Exorcist is now shifting hands to maybe something where that's going to be a little bit more successful. Megan is building. Five Nights at Freddy's is building, and so they're not out for the count.
No.
They just are taking kind of a half-assed hiatus for 2024 because their movies have been bad and they have not made money. Well, they all been profitable, but they've all been profitable.
I would contend that their movies are often bad, so that's not really a change. But
fair enough.
Anyway,
but we need to return to Longlegs for a second.
Yes.
Highest grossing neon film surpassing Parasite.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
What? Huh? You serious? That's crazy.
Surpassing Neon's Best Picture winner, probably the most venerated Best Picture winner of the last, five so years or whatever.
Probably the decade, right?
Yeah, I mean, most beloved.
Or I was going to say of the century. Let's be honest. Parasite. What are you stacking up against Parasite as? Like, I guess I don't know. Return of the King, but that's like obviously a very different ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, I in terms of like new movie fans, like the new class of like film Twitter, Letterboxd, that kind of thing, easily one of the most venerated of the century. Like you said, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's their biggest opening weekend ever. Obviously, I think they recently had either their first or second biggest opening with Immaculate earlier this year, and then Cuckoo will probably do solidly. I mean, I'm sure that movie's not again is going to be costing them like $3-4 million. Will do solid numbers. But this is also the highest grossing indie horror film in the U.S. of the last decade.
Wow.
So it is just a big win for Neon and horror fans, indie horror, however you want to slice it. Like, it just shows that if you put just a little effort behind the marketing of these and make a good movie that looks intriguing and is exciting, it'll pay out dividends. Like, horror has always been a reliable genre in that way, but we've talked about that many times on this show.
Totally.
But I think studios have started to settle into it's a safe genre. We will make our money back, but they don't really shoot for the stars. They don't really try anything, past that. And it takes a little guy coming into town like Neon to try and do that.
Yeah, and it's definitely Longlegs is a perfect example of the kind of marketing that you were in this video asking some other studios to start doing. The Longlegs trailer started showing 5 months ago or something like that. I mean, we were seeing that for a long time. And honestly, in those trailers, they were so vague that I barely even registered the movie as coming out. I'm like, I don't even understand what this is. There's just like symbols. But what really, I think, helps Longlegs is having that sort of general base knowledge of like, oh, I think I saw the trailer for that. But then when really early test screenings start coming out and early reviews saying it's scary as fuck, and then I think this movie also capitalized really, really good on memes and social media and TikTok and Nicolas Cage and all of this stuff. Just wrapped it up into a nice gift and then exploded it out of the box office.
Like a week before or so before this film released, they released that viral video of we put a heart rate monitor on Micah Monroe the first time she saw Nicolas Cage in the Longlegs makeup. And that went viral, and they set that they used that and sampled that into a trailer. I also have to say, I don't know about your experience, Tucker, but I don't think I ever saw the same trailer for Longlegs the same time in theaters. They put out a bunch of different versions of this trailer, a bunch of different cuts of it, and I think it makes it fresh. It makes it more mysterious for your average moviegoer.
Oh, sure.
And I think it really paid off for them.
Yeah, well, it definitely did. They made a lot of money on this one, which is good because Neon has. They've definitely been the lower grossing of the I don't know, like indie horror twins.
Yeah, they've always been towards the back of the pack a little bit. They're an awards darling for sure.
Occasionally, like Ferrari last year.
Yeah.
What the hell was up with that? That certainly lost them the amount of money. So they're kind of balanced out here with Longlegs. But I'm very happy for Osgood Perkins, Micah Monroe, obviously Nicolas Cage. Keep doing what you're doing, buddy. And Neon. Like, this is maybe like the definitive Neon movie of this year, and we'll see if that obviously continues to hold, but big hopes for everyone involved.
I think
Next
so,
up, it's
Twisters. Tucker, this film...
Sit and spin, Tanner.
Sit and spin. Here we go. On a budget of $155 million, this film has grossed 277 so far. Still climbing, still holding quite well, but suffered greatly. And I'm gonna fucking knock. I'm gonna knock the studios for doing this to this movie again, releasing it. I think Tucker, we talked about this like a week or so ago. Or no, not a week ago, like a month or two ago, when we said, hey, what are we doing releasing this before Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah.
Literally the week before Deadpool and Wolverine, what are we doing? It's Mission Impossible, Barbenheimer all over again. And it kind of was. It kind of was.
Yeah, it kind of was, because this is, I mean, I don't know, actually. I think it is actually pretty comparable, because this movie's maybe going to cross that 300 million. Okay, it probably will.
It will. It will.
But it won't be massively profitable. It'll just be safe.
Yes.
But what's interesting about this is you talk about that date, and my mind goes to just release it 1 week earlier. Like, you want a movie that's gonna be solid counter programming week to week.
Yeah.
Against Despicable Me 4, you're fine. You're fine.
Listen, buddy, you're fine. You can open against Despicable Me 4. I mean, you're not drawing a lot of, there's not a lot of people who are going back second weekend for Despicable Me 4. You're gonna catch some new people in, okay?
Yeah, and the snot-nosed kids are not the primary audience of Twisters here.
Yeah, drop the kids off at Despicable Me 4.
It's snot-nosed college graduates.
Yeah, exactly, like us. Or one of the more interesting hash marks details I wanted to point out here. Obviously, this film opened quite well. Again, Tucker, above tracking.
$81 million is really, really, really good.
I mean, comparable to like Dune Part 2 earlier this year.
Yeah.
It is currently the 8th highest grossing film of 2024. But like I said, the most interesting thing I wanted to point out here, perhaps the only time I've ever seen this noted, this film's highest grossing theaters opening weekend were not, the Lincoln Square in New York City or whatever movie theater in Los Angeles. The top grossing theater opening weekend for Twisters was in Oklahoma City. And the number 3 theater was in Knoxville, Tennessee. And again, this kind of became the marketing lesson episode of this box office sort of recap.
We're coming for your heels, Grace Randolph.
That's right, we are.
Our business caps are on.
I mean, you look at the brand partnerships here. They were running, obviously Dodge Ram was a big investor in this one. Had some product placement as they did in the first film. Wrangler at the same time. Lots of ads for this I heard during NASCAR races. Like they knew the target demographic that they needed to get out to see this for it to be a big deal, and it happened. I mean, $81 million. The tracking people didn't really have their finger on the pulse here, because those middle of the country moviegoers aren't exactly always factored in. So if you get them out, then you're going to blow over expectations.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And I have to say, Twisters definitely surpassed my expectations. Not only do I think that it was a very good movie, and a lot of the elements here do show, they'll reflect that I think it's a better movie than Twister was. But it is just opening bigger than I even thought was possible. I mean, I think we were driving to it, and I'm like,
this
movie doesn't have a shot in hell of going above like 40 or something like that. And you were like, but the tracking says 60-75. I'm like, holy shit! But then it even broke. It blast past that. So I need to do a little introspection and come back. Maybe go on a retreat out in the fields.
Oklahoma. So what else do I have here? Oh yeah, I mean, again, in terms of holding, this film's holding quite well, even compared to Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, I was totally expecting a 60+% drop off the second weekend. It ended up being 56.
That's great. That's an amazing hold.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite solid. I mean, the Monday after this was the best first Monday for a film since last year's box office phenomenon that was Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
It made $9.2 million the Monday after its release, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
And, we talk about how will it continue to hold? Will it cross that $300 million mark? Internationally, I can't really speak to that, but this film is going to PVOD on August 18th, which is 1 month after its theatrical release. To be fair, it's as I noted down at the bottom there, Universal did not follow their 18-day PVOD thing. like they did, like they have been since last year's Oppenheimer was the last thing
Those
to
are
not
rookie
go after
numbers.
18 days.
Let's pump those numbers up, buddy.
Yeah.
It's a good sign, though, that they're relaxing that. They have seen reasonable success with it in terms of capitalizing on the excitement quickly after the films come out. That's what happened with something like Cocaine Bear. But Twisters is obviously a more big scale cinematic experience, and so this is the right movie to be extending that a little bit farther with. I think for me, 6 weeks is probably the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think a month still feels a little tight, but what I think it'll be interesting to see how Twisters holds against the early August movies. I think that there's a chance that it's still solidly hanging in there. But I also think this is a movie that will do very well on home video. So
I mean,
I think that they're fine.
Again, I can understand where Universal's, execs might be coming at from this. I mean, they absolutely hemorrhaged theaters that second weekend to Deadpool and Wolverine. So I that was a little rough. And then sticking that around, I think this could do well if it stayed in theaters through like Labor Day. But 2.5 months is just, unfortunately, just a bit of a steep ask for movie theaters and studios to keep a movie there in the modern landscape. Like I said, unfortunately, but that's kind of the case.
Yep.
Okay, Tucker, let's round it out. The big boy, the big kahuna, the big swinging dick of 2024 is going to be Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, you say that, but I actually think so far, I think it's kind of actually Inside Out 2, because I don't think this movie's going to outgross Inside Out 2. I mean, it might.
No, I don't think so.
But if you're talking about the big swinging dick, it's like, oh, what about the movie that's the new like 10th highest grossing movie ever made, just like quietly in the background.
Yeah.
But this is obviously no slouch either. We are just over a week from release here. We've
going on
finished
2
up
weeks.
The movie's second weekend as of recording, and this film has grossed $852 million. That's fucking crazy.
Pretty good.
And Tanner, that is outgrossing already, which is a movie that's been out multiple weeks longer, Despicable Me 4.
Correct.
So, and one of these is a PG movie, and one of them is an R-rated movie. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on here, is that this, as a celebration movie, as a IP-driven movie, as an event film, an MCU film, capitalizing on all of those makes this movie an incredibly successful, legendarily successful R-rated film, which it's rare for an R-rated movie to really break boundaries. I mean, it happens every couple years, but you usually sit in that PG-13 area because you want people. It's
safest, that's the four quadrant area right there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is on track to pass $1 billion within a month of its release, which is very good. I mean, we are probably, Tucker, a week out from this thing making $1 billion at this point.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. And this thing broke all sorts of records for R-rated movies. I didn't list them all here. What I did say is that it broke R-rated records for every day of the first week of its release, and obviously we'll continue doing that. But like highest previews for an R-rated film, highest Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever for an R-rated film.
Just throw a stat at it, and it's probably broken.
It's probably stuck in that. So yeah, I mean it is not at this point the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. That belongs still to Joker, but that title that crown will be rescinded from Joker very soon.
Yeah. And then taken back again when the Crown Prince of Crime comes for his round 2.
No, Tucker, he's not the Crown Prince of Crime. Todd Phillips said so.
Right.
He's
that's
not.
Right. It's actually the exact opposite of that, technically.
Yeah.
According to the big man himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is just... it's interesting. There's actually just like not a lot to really say about this, other than it's just a massive hit. And I think that this film did really benefit from last year's slate of MCU movies being weaker, and them.
I'd also say it benefits from no other MCU films this year.
But I think we could also point back to where the audience's head seems to be at over the course of the last couple of years. Something like comparing this to the success of No Way Home is that within these long-running superhero franchises, the nostalgia has grown to the point where you can kind of Ouroboros itself and then recapture hype and energy and passion for things that honestly weren't even that well received in the past, because we're now getting Elektra coming back, and that being something that people are excited about. I mean, let's think to 2021 with No Way Home. people don't really like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but they like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man so much. Like, oh my God, Andrew Garfield! Ah, Jamie Foxx is back as Electro. Ah! Like we've reached the point of eating your own tail, but still like spitting out billions of dollars. That this is the perfect example of that. It's a cameo fest. It's celebrating the Fox's universe's history, but it's also closing that chapter, and that's like. This is a massive button on the end of it.
Yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, this is setting up things to come for the MCU in the future. Obviously, this came out, the weekend of Comic-Con, and we'll talk about that in headlines. Don't you worry. But yeah, I mean, setting aside my own personal thoughts on the quality of this film, I mean, it is just. Disney could not be fucking happier with how this year turned out for them. So you want to rewind like 6 months or whatever when we were talking about this summer slate for them, and you're like, damn, Disney doesn't have a lot coming out this year. I wonder how they're gonna fare. And it was like, oh, they have at this point probably they will have the first 2 films to cross the $1 billion mark this year. Potentially 3 out of the 4. I mean, we'll see how Mufasa does, obviously. But it's just funny in retrospect to be like, ooh, I don't know how Disney's
Well, it's
gonna do
also
this
funny
year.
to think back an entire year or so when MCU movie quality was starting to dip, and Bob Iger was like, "Hey, we're gonna start toning things back a little bit." Cutting the output for higher quality, and not necessarily that Deadpool and Wolverine Inside Out 2 are the highest quality Disney films that have been made. I personally think they're both very good, but and that's certainly reflected in the cinema scores and the Rotten Tomatoes and things. So they're very big, crowd-pleasing films. But we were looking at him and be like, I mean, sure, that seems like a lot of guff, and like you're kind of just like talking out both sides, but they did it.
Put your money where your mouth is, Iger.
They did it, and the 2 big movies they've put out so far this year have both been incredibly well received and are both going to be like the highest grossing movies of this year. And so, like, credit where credit is due. They did the damn thing. But it'll be interesting to see how this carries into next year when we have many, many more MCU movies, multiple Pixar movies. Like the slate has now been backfilled. So let's see how this balances out. Though also a lot of those projects then got more time in the oven, which could end up benefiting them.
Hopefully.
So I just hope for good movies at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean that's what I hope for as well. I mean, we're doing it this year, but also next year is fucking jam packed for not just Disney and Marvel or whatever, but every studio.
Mostly because of the strikes last year.
There was this. Yeah, there was the strikes last year. There is this like survive till 25 sentiment amongst Hollywood studios of like, okay, we know this year has been a little rocky, and now this year in June and July seems to be rebounding quite nicely. But like, just gotta hang on, ride it out until 2025. That's when we're putting all our chips there. So it'll be interesting to see how that sentiment fares next year when those movies might overperform or underperform, whatever. I also want to point out, just kind of on a separate note, that I think things like Guardians of the Galaxy last year or Deadpool and Wolverine this year are succeeding quite well with people who might have Marvel superhero fatigue, what have you, because they've always operated in sort of a separate space than X-Men or the MCU or the Avengers or whatever. I think these are things that certainly bring more casual fans in. People who know Marvel but aren't keeping up with it on every movie and TV show. And obviously, bringing back Wolverine, who is, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, one of the most beloved superhero performances or, sort of fan pop culture performances ever, especially the last 20 years, was a big get. Last thing I want to point out. One quick thing before that. This is push the MCU past $30 billion. Hey, if you can believe it, first franchise to ever do that.
Shocker.
Also, first franchise to have 32 movies in it, so it comes with the territory. But yeah, that balances out to basically $1 billion a picture, which is
averages out to that.
Averages out, yes. And this film, as I sort of discovered a while after this film released, we're only 2 weeks out, but released on the 10-year anniversary of that Deadpool test footage being uploaded to YouTube. Yep.
And there's been a lot coming around after the movie has come out about how celebratory this movie was for its creators and cast. A lot of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman interviews talking about how much this film particularly means to them. And so there are There are certainly naysayers out there. There are certainly people. Oh, I've seen a lot of articles going around about how this movie is cinematic slop and destroying the landscape and all of that. And of course,
yeah, but there's also articles, Tucker. There's also articles about how Sean Levy is a fucking the new populist filmmaker.
Yeah, so this movie got a little bit of divisiveness on sort of like internet and writer discussion, but let's not shit ourselves. This is a massive all-around success in basically every way it can be thrown at.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to point that out at the bottom there, the Deadpool test footage. Chuck, do you remember seeing that when that first dropped on the internet? Okay. I remember seeing that when it first, well, in the lead up to the Deadpool movie. I didn't watch it in 2014 or whatever, but like I remember, in the lead up to that film being like, and it all started because this Deadpool test footage was mysteriously uploaded to YouTube one day.
You fell for it.
And well, no, I mean, I mean, honestly, I think it's widely accepted. Of course, you can't say this, but that Ryan Reynolds did that himself.
I mean, as far as I know, that's what's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just have to think like that was like the most consequential moment of his entire career was uploading that test footage. It translated to him getting the superhero role, being in that sort of big smash hit in Deadpool, and now he's in the second highest grossing film of the year, gunning for that first spot,
right? With
and
If.
will. Oh, and of course, in If, and also like will be one of the most anticipated parts of like the next two Avengers movies or whatever. Like, just an insanely consequential thing for his career. So made it interesting to me that this film came out basically on the 10-year anniversary of that being uploaded. Very interesting.
All right, we're wrapping up here. Last time on Backlot Banter, talking about the movies that came out in June and checking back in on them. Bad Boys: Ride or Die has now almost made it to $400 million. It'll probably pass that. It's still.
I don't. Is this still in theaters?
Still in theaters, yeah. I mean, Tanner, it only has to make $2 million over the course of the next ever.
Yeah,
ever.
I guess internationally as well. It'll get there at some point.
If it makes
for sure
$200 million. Sorry, whoa. If it makes $200,000 each week for the next couple weeks, okay, it'll do it. Like it's really not an issue, but still, great success on that movie. Great success.
Great success.
Now I got Tanner. I point the finger of justice, and it lands on you this time. And this time, it shakes back and forth because I checked. I usually go back and check the numbers that were put in the top of our slides from last month. You had the watchers at $51 million, and then I checked what it currently is at, and it's currently at $32 million. So something went wrong.
Oh wait, did I? Oh, something went wrong there.
It was probably supposed to be $31 million in week 5, because it was probably out of
what happened there?
The finger of justice judges you and shames you because I was looking. I'm like, what went wrong here?
51. I really had that in that June slide. I had it making $51 million. That's very interesting. I don't know where that came from.
It was probably supposed to be 31. You probably just mistyped the first key.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But the finger of judgment, it keep it in your mind. All right, don't fuck up again.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Next up, Inside Out 2 went from $1.2 billion to $1.5 billion, making it the highest-grossing animated film of all time, beating out Incredibles 2, I think, was...
Frozen 2.
You're right. It was 2. Frozen 2, Mario, Incredibles, I think. And now this has frog-hopped all of those. And Tanner, I just want to use this as the section where we can talk about this. That's crazy.
Sure. Yeah, that's nuts. This is also, as you said a little bit earlier, the 10th highest grossing film of all time, period, full stop. Fucking crazy.
$1 billion. This being $1 billion picture was something that we didn't necessarily see, given modern Pixar's 2020's output and the way that they've been received, and also the way that Inside Out, many years ago at this point, almost a decade, did very, very well. We talked about a lot of this last time, but I just want to kind of reiterate. It's crazy this film has almost doubled what Inside Out did. I mean, that was already a successful film.
Because that was like $800 million, and this is encroaching on 1.6 billion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, God.
And also the fact that it's just the highest grossing animated film, and also that's one of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time. Usually these kind of things end up being obvious as soon as the film comes out, but I was not
Yeah.
expecting this kind of hold from Inside
I mean,
Out
this
2.
is kind of had the leg out that we typically see, as we talked about Despicable Me or Minions movies having, of just the thing that parents can consistently be like, oh, we'll bring the kids to this again. You know, it's get out of the heat, get into the AC. What can we go see? Oh, I don't know, Inside Out 2.
And-
Why not? Or your kids were like, Mommy, take me to go see Inside Out again, or whatever. They're saying they want to see Anxiety Tucker, not the Minions
it seems like
anymore,
that's true.
and that's what's wrong with society.
Wait, hold on. But also, you gotta imagine Pixar HQ is wiping the sweat from their brows. They're like, we are
big
not
time.
fucked anymore. Frankly, we're not fucked anymore. And I think Disney's
some cash
probably
in the
giving
bank.
them their full support again, which is something that had been certainly pretty shaky when a couple of movies over the last few years had underperformed. And it's, again, you got to give credit where credit is due. Bob Iger saying we're going back to sequels. And it worked.
And Tucker,
it worked.
you say, well, of course it worked. I mean, I don't know if there was any doubt that it wouldn't work. Any major doubt anyway. I think worst case scenario, you would have been like, okay, maybe it'll do a little bit better than the first Inside Out. But you say Disney's going back to giving Pixar full support in the form of what other sequels can you make quick? They spit on Elio, Tucker. They spit on Elio. That's what I say.
We'll see how that movie does. But also, A Quiet Place Day 1, going from $139 million in its second weekend to week 6, and it's pretty much out of theaters at this point, $258 million. Just great.
Really
just amazing
solid.
for that movie.
Yeah.
And then Kevin Costner, we salute you and we say adios, my old pal, because not only has Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1 only grossed $11 million in the course of a month, and it is dead in the water in terms of still being in theaters, but also we were supposed to be getting Horizon and American Saga Chapter 2 in like 2 weeks.
in just a
but
couple
we are
weeks.
no longer doing that. We don't even know when
sad.
the movie's actually coming out now.
No, I would, and we can talk about this. Actually, I don't know if I put that in headlines, but I mean, you mentioned it here, so it's not a big deal. Chapter 2 is gonna show up at the Venice Film Festival, so there's that, and so I anticipate like a fall release for it. I don't know how long they want to sit on it. Is my main thing.
I also think that I'm looking at my crystal ball. Premiering in Venice is not going to help this film because it's not going to be great and it's going to get really bad initial impressions.
Well, Tucker, yeah, look what the Cannes premiere for Part 1 did. Look what that did for the film's box office.
Yep.
So, I don't know.
Month over month.
Bad stuff.
Next up, talking about what this month of July compares to previous Julys in past years, and once again, we're holding steady. Though, last year was just. I mean, that's just a banger. That 2023, that's a legendary month.
It's got some high highs and some low lows. I would say. I mean, you had the high highs of obviously Barbenheimer and then Mission Impossible as well, but then you had some real stinkers in Haunted Mansion and Insidious. But this year, you got some high highs. We both really enjoyed Twisters. We both really enjoyed Longlegs. I guess you weren't. This is Longlegs is a composite of Abram and I's.
It would be a little bit lower because I think I give it like a 7. So
yeah, but also the average is a little bit lower anyway. So who's to blame really? I'm not pointing any fingers of blame like you.
No,
are,
I have a finger of judgment, Tanner. The finger of judgment can do blame, but it doesn't always do blame.
Oh, it does not specialize. It does not specialize. In blame.
But also we have it compared to 2022, in which another Minions movie came out that year. Another MCU movie came out that year. Another movie with big clouds.
Another movie about how clouds.
Oh God, how clouds are scary.
Yeah, another movie where a lady murders people. Except,
no,
did she actually murder people in Crawdads?
Yes, I think so. I think that's like the ending twist. Yeah.
Okay.
Tanner, you missed the obvious there. Daisy Edgar Jones, you dumb fuck.
Huh? What are you talking
She's
about?
She's back.
We already did. No, Tucker. We already did the Twisters 1 to Nope. We did the Cloud already. That one's checked off the list.
My bad. And then Super Pets and Maxine.
Of course. Well, no, that was my Woman Murders People.
Oh, I thought you were talking Longlegs.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh
Nicolas
my
Cage.
God, he's in both Longlegs and the DC League of Super Pets.
Wait, no, is he in? Is he in the? No, I'm thinking of Teen Titans. He's Superman.
No, yeah.
DC League of Super Pets is John Krasinski as Superman.
Oh, well, all right. That bit really lost steam there, boys.
That died.
There's
on
our
the
averages.
I could have just
Enjoy them.
lied. No one remembers that. I could have just
excellent
lied.
point. I believed you. And now I'll never trust you again. Tanner, let's look at how this year is progressing month on month with your little funny little chart there, buddy.
Yes, that's right. So we got close in June. We're diverging a little bit in July. We've invoked Barbenheimer's name a couple times here, and that's your reasoning there, is that Barbenheimer came out this time last year, and so July is just it pulled away from 2024 a little bit here. We were super close in June. So March of this year was the only month that surpassed the previous month's total gross at the box office. So I don't know. I think we'll be just operating at a lower hum, close to where we are right now for the rest of the year,
which is not
basically.
a shock. Though I think will be. I think that this movie this year has a lot of question marks still in terms of how big will movies be. We've actually seen a number of movies as the year has gone on really start to surpass expectations, and things like Longlegs overperforming and Twisters opening to $81 million and multiple movies making $1 billion. That helps us keep the pace, and I do think that there's a chance that things like Wicked and Beetlejuice and Mufasa and Moana, these could stack up if they all start bringing people out into theaters, because they've been marketing the piss out of all of those movies.
They have, for sure.
That could actually make this fall a lot stronger than last fall was, because last fall kind of culminated in the end of the year with a good chunk of movies, but it was like, we're talking about like a Wish and the Marvels there, like, and we're instead of Wish and the Marvels, we're gonna be getting Mufasa and Sonic and Wicked and
you say Wish in the Marvels. Those were our like Thanksgiving releases, and this year those Thanksgiving releases are going to be potentially this year's Barbenheimer in Wicked and Gladiator 2. So I think confidence has sort of been restored in box office forecasting a little bit. I think we're still going to be down. If we look to the year overall on the next slide here, we are down 19%, which is, we're getting better, I guess I'll say. Last month we were down 22%. Now we're down to 19%.
In terms of the total. Gotcha.
In terms of the total, yes.
Yeah, catch up slowly.
So we're catching up slowly, and I think, like you said, Tucker, last fall was a little slow. This fall, I think there's a little bit more confidence now that the summer has done quite well. And yeah, things like Beetlejuice could set some records for like September box office, which is notoriously a pretty low time. And Gladiator
Tanner,
and Wicked could both be some good counter
I'm
programming.
gonna be honest, Alien Romulus could break August records. Frankly, that movie has been marketed a bunch. People seem very, very excited for it. And August is another low hum month.
It is usually, that's always kind of the punting ground for summer. But we have Aliens are the only big thing I would say.
I'm just saying we could have a record-breaking movie this month.
We could. But yeah, let's
see what's next.
Let's cross our fingers and see what's next.
We have a lot of updates to the top 10 highest grossing movies of 2024.
Welcome to the club. 5 new movies.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Of course, Deadpool and Wolverine. These are the domestic numbers, by the way. Deadpool and Wolverine is now sitting pretty at number 2, and Despicable Me 4 sitting at number 3. Twisters has already surpassed Godzilla vs. Kong. That's crazy, actually. I think Godzilla vs. Kong probably cost a little bit less, because Twisters was at 155.
I don't really remember.
155 sounds high for Godzilla x Kong. Sorry, I was saying Godzilla vs. Kong. I apologize greatly, Adam Wingard. This is Godzilla x Kong, the new Empire.
Tucker, you're lucky I did not bust out the finger of judgment on that one. You're lucky, pal.
I'll tell you where you can put that finger. And at number 8,
I don't want to hear
Bad
that.
Boys Ride or Die has beaten King of the Planet of the Apes, and A Quiet Place Day 1 spends, I don't know, actually, it'll probably spend another month in the top 10 here. I don't think that Alien Romulus or whatever the fuck else will beat it, but
Borderlands.
But it won't stick around till the end of the year. And I'd say that bottom 5 actually should be quaking in their boots with the fall and winter slate.
I didn't really anticipate the bottom 5 to be evacuated so quickly this month. I mean, let's see what got kicked out here.
Yeah.
Inshallah, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is no longer there. That's number 11.
Oh God!
Wait, so long, sayonara, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. You will not be back unless we do some refunded tickets or something. I don't know. Also leaving there is If.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't expect that to stick around.
No. Then Bob Marley, One
Love. That's really the one that we were like, please don't let this stick around. Please, love of God.
I mean, these are all ones like Bob Marley, One Love, The Fall Guy, and then the Garfield movie is also one that was up there last time. Those were all ones that were like, I think for a couple months we even had like sub $100 million at the domestic box office movies in there.
For the first few months of the year, totally we did.
This
feels a lot better.
It does feel
and
a lot
honestly,
better.
Tanner, most of the movies in this top 10 are good. I mean, I don't like Despicable Me, I don't like Godzilla, and I don't like Kung Fu Panda. And for you can add Deadpool to that list. But I'm liking these odds at the moment.
I am liking these odds as well. You know, also worth noting, Dune Part 2 had that number. Well, actually had the number 1 spot for a good long while, and then was
heartily surpassed.
Seemed to be sitting. Was quickly surpassed and bumped down to number 4. You think we'll get? We're talking, the next 4 months of the box office here. Do you think we'll get anything reaching that top 5 again?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, isn't there almost always something from the last month of the year in the top 5?
I mean, like Mufasa will definitely make over $200 million domestically. We'll be all right. It'll be sad to see A Quiet Place Day 1 go, but just because I think that it'd be neat to have that in there.
But Tanner,
I digress.
Let's see what you have for the headlines. A lot of stuff this month because Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. We meant to make a video,
happened.
But didn't happen.
Didn't happen. We did other shit. The only thing I would have really liked to have done a video on is obviously the big reveal, the number 1 thing I have here to talk about, and that is Robert Downey Jr. returning to the Avengers franchise as Doctor Doom in the newly titled Avengers Doomsday, and then obviously Avengers Secret Wars as well. Mostly because that caused, a lot of discourse online. Lot of discourse online around this casting. So Tucker, let's just get our feelings on. Let's do it on the record here. I think it's cool.
I think it's cool as well. But Tanner, that's not the big news. Yeah. The big news is that the Russo brothers are returning for both those movies. I honestly,
of course.
RDJ coming back, different character. It's not bringing back Tony Stark. I'm fine with it. I think it's cool. I think he's a great actor. I think he'll do a great job. But I really think I
think so too.
What's making me feel a lot better about the future of the MCU is that the Russo brothers are coming back. They have helmed 4 of the best and most successful and most enduring films in this franchise. 2 of the highest grossing films of all time. A couple of highest grossing films of all time. And that just makes me a lot more confident that these films are going to be focused, that they're going to be handled right, that they're going to be balanced. Tanner, Infinity War and Endgame are, I think, two of the best movies ever made, and certainly 2 of the best big movies with tons of people produced simultaneously. Those guys know what they're fucking doing, and so.
But here's my thing about this, Tucker. Is honestly, truthfully speaking, were 2 new Avengers movies ever going to be box office disappointments?
No, that's not what I was saying. No. I was just thinking Phase 4 and 5 have been rocky in terms of who are we bringing in, what's the production timeline looking like, how are budgets impacting things, and then lots of times there's weird CGI and stuff. I think that the Russo brothers they've done this for a long time. They know what they're doing, and they constantly delivered high quality MCU projects. I have a lot more faith that they can handle these movies. When we're looking at oh, maybe Destin Daniel Cretton will maybe do one of them, maybe do both of them. Like, but can he handle that by himself? Shang-Chi was a lot smaller.
Yes. I mean, it's the two-man team. I think that makes the prospect of doing again another two Avengers movies back to back a little bit more doable and feasible potentially. I mean, they're good stewards of Kevin Feige's vision. I think largely what it all communicates to me, this Comic-Con panel, this casting, this news, whatever you want to say, the retitling, speaks to Feige and the creative directors over at Marvel Studios having a clearer vision, a roadmap now to the finale of this.
And we'll
saga.
see how that starts to pan out, especially in the as of now, like, kind of unclear slate of shows leading up to that. The shows have been really hit or miss in terms of reception over the last few years. They've also been incredibly hit or miss in terms of actually meaningfully impacting the movies, which are the real tentpoles. This is going to be the testing ground for all of that. It's going to be a testing ground to see if the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige can stitch together what has happened in the disparate timelines and plot lines of 20 plus projects over the last 4 years. So
Crazy.
this is a big thing. But I breathe a sigh of relief, not with RDJ coming back. Frankly, I think whoever they would have picked for Doom would have been fine. And it's not like they do bad picks for casting most of the time. So casting was never really the issue for me. But the fact that the Russo brothers are back, I think really makes me like, okay, they will focus in on this in a way that I was worried other directors handling it. And then also the news that things like Deadpool and Wolverine and the Fantastic Four will then be, like, we know for a fact that those plot lines will be continued forward into these films. In the way that we're looking at, like, Shang-Chi, Black Widow, Eternals, Captain Marvel.
Yes, that's my point. Is that, like, that we were really spinning our wheels, and this is getting into MCU discussion, which we don't have to do here, but we're really spinning our wheels, and so I mean, it almost makes those movies look worse in hindsight to be like, all right, so here are the movies that are actually going to matter for the things that are going to pay off. So anyway, so that's the big news. That's the big news of the month for movies.
Dropping Kang. We'll see how they
I mean, that was
narratively
a necessity.
It was necessary.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah. Could have recast, frankly, and that would have made some of what has been set up over the last couple projects make more sense. But all we have to do is wait.
But also, I think the business move of bringing RDJ back is obviously going to be much more lucrative for them. Anyway, Tucker, Shrek 5 is coming out in 2026.
I'm surprised it's that far away, to be honest. I thought they were working on this for a while. Like, we've been hearing rumors about Shrek 5 for 2+ years at this point. So, okay. That's interesting. DreamWorks is... We'll see what happens. Poor DreamWorks, but... Okay, fine. July 1st.
Tucker, Skibbity Toilet.
Tanner, you have this as a headline?
And Michael
Bay. This is the only time we will ever talk about this on this channel.
That's fair. That's a fair point.
For the finger judgment is pointing to the future and saying this will not ever happen. And
I mean, we talked about this a little bit. It's a meeting, it's a headline, and that's all it ever will be. Fingers crossed. Anyway,
I'm of the opinion of fuck it, but I just don't think it'll ever happen.
That's fair. You know what? That's fair too. Some surprise pop-ups for the 2024 fall slate include Timothée Chalamet and James Mangold's A Complete Unknown, and then Jason Reitman's Saturday Night. Were both confirmed for release dates. Saturday Night, which is the retelling of the first episode of Saturday Night Live back in 1975, is going to be coming out October 11th.
Retitled as well. We might have referenced this film
retitled
in previous months, but it used to be SNL.
It was called SNL 1975. And then A Complete Unknown, a music biopic about the life of Bob Dylan, is now going to be released on Christmas 2024.
It's very, very smart. Now that's good positioning right there. Chris Stuckman.
Yeah, I mean, watch out for these for award season. Is basically all I would say. Yeah.
Oh wait.
They're making a sequel to A Devil Wears Prada.
Tanner. Yeah. Okay. Tanner, we just watched Twisters.
That's true.
But okay, fine. We'll see what happens.
Yep. Hey, speaking of Neon, a little bit earlier, Chris Stuckman, we know him. He's a YouTube movie guy. Well, We are familiar with his game. His movie Shelby Oaks, his horror film Shelby Oaks, has been picked up for distribution by Neon.
It's
Pretty cool.
really interesting, and that really does signal confidence to me. Neon is on the up and
Yes.
up. Shelby Oaks is interesting in that this is Chris Stuckman's first theatrical or feature project. I don't even know if it was supposed to be theatrical to this point. Also, this was actually independently sourced. I believe it was actually almost entirely funded by his Kickstarter. So this is probably going to be barely over $1 million in terms of its budget, but it's just fascinating, and it could really signal something interesting for that guy that started obviously as a film critic on YouTube, and now has a reasonably sized studio publishing and distributing his film. This is, I'm definitely keeping my eye on this.
I think so too. I think it's just a cool story and kind of how that all transpired. And he has kind of moved away from doing like weekly movie reviews on YouTube. Well, is that right?
He's making a goddamn movie.
He's making a movie, but I also like this position that he took. It was like, people sort of criticized him for being softer on new releases, and he's like, listen, as I've been gearing up to like make my own movie, I sort of like didn't feel right about shitting on other people's hard work and effort and everything. So I respect that as well. We'll still do that.
We're not making movies, Sam.
Anyway,
we're not making movies, and we're not making money.
All right, Tucker. There are new entries in the Conjuring and Insidious franchises coming out next year. They will release 1 week apart.
What the fuck? Which movie? What are these movies? Do we know what they are?
Insidious 6, and I think they're keeping the title for Conjuring 5, Conjuring
Last
Rites.
That's right. Yeah, bringing back. Bring back the duo.
Will both of these have Patrick Wilson?
That'll be interesting. An interesting month to be that guy.
Will Patrick Wilson direct both of these films?
That'll be fascinating.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be a fun couple weeks.
It's Wilson's
Though I
Wacky
also have
Week
to say,
is what I'm going to call that one. Yeah.
The nose of judgment is pointing towards the future. These movies will not release 1 week apart. One of these will be delayed. One of them will have moved up. I think it's too close for two basically similar movies.
I think so too.
Featuring the same fucking guy to come out 1 week apart.
But imagine if they did.
It would be funny. But it's not good for the box office prospects of either of those films. I mean, they'd just be like, people would be fucking confused. Let's be honest.
Yeah, Tucker. There are probably a non-zero number of people who think that those two franchises are related.
I did like a decade ago. I was looking. I'm like, I just see Patrick Wilson. Like, what's going on here? Like, I thought it was.
That's all you want to see. That's all you want to see. Hey, listen. Sometimes you gotta put the box office receipts aside, and you gotta do something for the comedy of it all. That's what I say. Okay, Tucker. I'm gonna do a quick film festival roundup for the rest of the year. We got TIFF. We got Venice. Coming up. So TIFF, the big headlining films there are going to be Neon's Anora out of the Cannes Film Festival, Conclave, which is slated for a November release.
Anora, yeah.
Palme d'Or winner, Anora, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah. The Wild Robot, which is sort of an anticipated DreamWorks animated film coming out this fall. Netflix's The Piano Lesson. Netflix's Amelia Perez. Ron Howard's Eden will be premiering there. To be purchased probably by a streaming service. Let's be real with ourselves.
Ron,
and
please, God,
please don't
stick to your guns, man. He doesn't have any guns anymore.
He does not. And
Nutcrackers.
David Gordon Green's Nutcrackers is the opening film.
You can't keep a good DGG down. A bad DGG.
You can't keep. Well, this is maybe a return to form. It's like a small little dramedy. It's Ben Stiller. It's in his first movie in like 7 years or something like that.
We'll see.
So
you gotta respect the fucking hustle.
I do have to respect it a little bit. Venice, Tucker. The Venice Film Festival also is coming up this fall. Films releasing there. The big boys are Joker, Folie à Deux, actually competing in competition that could win the top prize at the Venice Film Festival. Who's to say? Also, there is going to be Beetlejuice, which is releasing in about a month now. Luca Guadagnino's Queer. Pablo. What am I saying? I'm blanking on his name. Not Pablo. Pedro Almodovar. Pedro Almodovar is The Room Next Door. Pablo Larraín's Maria. That's what I got those two flipped in my head. Holly Ryan's Baby Girl. She's the director of Bodies Sweet. From a couple years ago. John Watts' Wolves, starring Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and Harmony Korine's Baby Invasion.
I am familiar with this. Tanner,
Okay,
we
good,
gotta
good.
seek out fucking aggro drift before Baby
I
Nation.
think I think it's online somewhere. I think it was like on exclusively on a website somewhere. So we'll have to we'll get our hands on that some point soon. We'll make that a nightly activity.
We watch.
And Tucker,
We make a video. We watch aggro drift every day for an entire week.
It would drive us insane. Films entering production. Just wanted to quickly note this. Some things. Fantastic Four: First Steps is entering production. To be noted, the same month that Superman, the new Superman movie, is ending production. So interesting there. Yorgos Lanthimos' Begonia, which is releasing next November, is entering production.
Does he have another movie coming up before that?
No, he does not.
What happened to the Save the Green Planet one? Is that what this is?
Oh, this is
that
that one. Yes. Yeah. Let's see. Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, starring Paul Mescal and Jesse Buckley, is entering production now. And this is Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love. This is starring Jennifer Lawrence, is entering production. And gotta love the guy, gotta love the work ethic. Luca Guadagnino's After the Hunt is also entering production.
Tanner, we just talked about a whole slate of directors, all of whom are just like, bam, put out a movie. Ron Howard, David Gordon Green, Pedro Almodovar. They're just Luca Guadagnino,
Harmony Korine.
Yeah, we're just on a tear here. Which honestly, those are the directors I respect most. You got your big wig Martin Scorsese's and Steven Spielberg's out there putting out a movie every couple of years. No. Get in the goddamn trenches.
Tucker, they're
That's true.
old.
They're
Tucker, they're
yeah,
so
they're
old. Yeah. This is kind of a headline, I guess. Did you see that Martin Scorsese said that he's done making like big, massive production movies?
That's fine. That's good for him. I mean, scale back.
He's getting old. He's winding down in his career, so he said he's focusing on some smaller stuff, which is interesting.
And hopefully that means
I
we
will
get
miss
a couple
those big.
More. Tanner, he made fucking 20 of them. Just go back and watch. You haven't even seen all.
I know. I know. But I wanted to see. He was gonna make that movie on the ship. I wanted to see that movie on the ship. That's all I was gonna say. I don't think it was ever officially confirmed. He bought the rights to the book, but it seems as though he's probably not going to be doing that.
But here's the thing. He also knows people. If he thinks it's a good enough idea, he can
That's
tell someone to make that, and they'll goddamn make it.
Yeah, producer Martin Scorsese is just fine with me. Okay. Tucker, August 2024. We're wrapping up. We're winding down. Here we go. We're wrapping up the summer in many ways. So, Tucker, as I said, we're recording this a little late, so things like Trap and Harold and the Purple Crayon have already set the world aflame, especially that latter film. Those released on August 2nd. This coming weekend, Tucker, in just a couple days from when you, dear viewer, are watching this video, we'll see the release of Borderlands, Neon's Cuckoo, and It Ends With Us.
Exciting.
So, then the week after that, August 16th, is going to be Alien Romulus. That was going to be Horizon Chapter 2, but that got punted to infinity.
So long!
Yeah. August 23rd and the 30th are also looking to be some... That's the beginning of the August stinkers, I think. August 23rd is Blink Twice.
Harold and the Purple Crayon released last week. Borderlands is upcoming.
That's true. That's true. Blink Twice and The Crow.
You know how if you
August 23rd?
Live in a place that smells bad for long enough, you don't start noticing it. That's just currently what's happening to you.
Yeah.
You're like, what do you mean? What do you mean this stink hasn't hit yet? You're like, buddy, Harold and the Purple Crayon came out last week.
I saw it too. And then August 30th is Reagan and Blumhouse's Afraid.
Gosh, yeah.
Afraid.
Tanner, let's see what we think will happen with these godforsaken.
Okay, let me get my numbers pulled up here, Tucker. So we have pretty similar ones here. Our top two are the same. Obviously, I think those are pretty obvious. So we have Alien Romulus at number 1. I'm gonna say for Alien Romulus, I'm gonna say $45 million opening weekend. Perfectly solid. And for It Ends With Us, I'm going to say 30, which is a lot more than I would have said if you asked me 2 weeks ago.
And then,
but yeah,
yes.
I don't know. I was just gonna say the hype for this, if you can call it that, seems to be ticking up. It could potentially, Ryan Reynolds at number 1 at the box office could hand the baton over to his wife Blake Lively, number 1 at the box office. That'd be pretty interesting.
No way this beats Deadpool Wolverine week 3. What? How much would Deadpool and Wolverine have to drop for this to make less than $30 million?
What did it make? It would have to. I guess it would have to drop like
That's not
60%
happening week
from week to week. Yeah.
But then where we really start to diverge is I'm putting slightly more emphasis on the IP recognition and sort of bombast of Borderlands, and you have Trap at number 3. Now we did these before. Any numbers were out.
That's true. I was a gentleman about this. I have my original prediction for Trap, which was $20 million. That's already proven to be a little low. Or a little high, rather. Ended up being 15 for Trap opening weekend. I had Borderlands at 15. I will contend that I still think it will open below Trap.
All right. Well, that's what's on the records anyway. And then I have Afraid at the bottom, and you have The Crow.
Yeah.
Tanner, we're this is Coughing Baby versus Coughing Baby.
Yeah, this is really. I mean, I was going back and forth between a couple different options. There's a movie that I didn't put on the upcoming releases called The Forge. That's a Christian film coming out. I thought about putting that in there. I thought about putting Afraid in there. And then The Crow. Those are the big 3 that I was like, which one?
Yeah, the big 3. Everyone's always talking about those as the big 3.
The big 3 movies. All right, upcoming movies. I decided that The Forge would probably be a nothing faith-based film like we've seen a couple of happen this year.
Those
Afraid,
almost never get into top 5 opening weekends.
Yeah. Afraid, I think the very, very, shallow marketing cycle for this is going to hurt it. So I guess The Crow, because that trailer's been out for longer and people
it has, but has
recognize...
it? Seriously, I actually think I've only seen it once, Tanner. I go to the theaters almost every other week.
Yeah, no, it's...
and...
It's a Lionsgate fumble, is what we're talking about with The Crow.
Versus a Jason Blum fumble. Fump House.
I don't know. Fump House.
But we'll be talking about all these movies next month when we get to take a look back in August. Again, it's always nice to have a little bit of a palate cleanser. You get a January at the beginning of the year, and it's just like oh man, slop, and then it starts building back up. You get a nice summer, and then you get an August, and you're like slop, and then you get a nice fall season where actual movies start coming out, and then a holiday season where movies come out.
August and September are always pretty shaky.
But January, February, the case. So you get a nice 2 months.
January, February, yeah, same, exactly. So there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for tagging along on this recap of July 2024 at the box office. We will be returning to mop up the summer with August next time. So
slop up the mop.
We'll see you then. Slop up the mop.
No, other way.
Slop 'em up.
Mop up the slop is what I meant to say.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll dub it in. Don't worry. Bye.